All right, here we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome here to the all-new B2B Hour on auto conversion. This is a new monthly webcast that we're facilitating here on auto conversion for B2B marketing and sales professionals. That would be business owners, leaders, entrepreneurs, you name it. Today is Wednesday, April 21st, and I am Ryan Girardi. Thank you for joining us. It's great to have you here. Our general theme idea behind this show is how to stay connected and engage with customers, strategic partners, and employees. So you're going to meet some great thought leaders today, and we're going to have some pretty deep level conversation. Hopefully, YouTube does okay. YouTube seems to be having some network connectivity issues, as far as I can tell, unless they're on my end, but seem to be on YouTube's end. Now we offer a unique product here on auto conversion, and in order for us to pull this off, we do invite you here to learn, to network, and to grow your personal brand, grow your network, and your online reputation. That's our kind of our goals here for today. Now we have some big topics today. We're going to look at programmatic media, which primarily is more of a business to consumer play with advertising, but there is a B2B play as well. So we're going to be looking at that. And that'll be my first interview. I have Michael Morscheck coming on in just a moment from Brand Market Media. And then after that interview, it'll be about 10 to 12 minutes. We will have Russel Gentry on from M1 Data and Analytics. And Russell and I will be talking about website visitors, anonymous website visitors, and how to turn those into identifiable active prospects. And then after those two interviews, at the bottom of the hour, we're going to get our panel discussion started. We have Kent Julian from Cleaver coming on, who was invited by Michael. And then we have Richard Delancey coming on as well. He is CEO and co-founder at Dealership Toolkit, and we'll be getting in to all that. So all this coming up and more. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back. All right, here we go. Hello, Michael. Welcome to the program. Great to have you here today. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Ryan. Great to be here.
Thank you. Now, you're West Coast, if I recall, right?
I am. Mount Vernon, Washington. We're about an hour and 15 minutes north of Seattle, right between Vancouver, BC, and Seattle.
Okay. Bet it's very beautiful out there. I was in Portland many years ago. It's been a while, but I didn't get a chance to get up to Seattle, and everyone's like, how did you miss Seattle? So
yeah.
Well, thanks for dialing in today. Michael and I were introduced by a mutual friend, Tiffany Simonson. If you're ever watching this, Tiffany, hello. And Michael reached out because he's got some new product developments in the play of programmatic media. So what I want to do, first give us some context, and we don't need a whole story, but why don't you start, give us some context of what your company does at Brand Market Media. Then we'll get into why programmatic media is part of the mix as well.
Sure. So Brand Market Media, I founded in 2014, and we began as a website development and hosting company and have quickly evolved into paid media. So we have offered for quite some time Google ads, Facebook ads, display search, retargeting, a lot of those traditional paid media opportunities. We have started to evolve into more advanced digital marketing functionality, including programmatic. And I have some former colleagues from a previous relationship that have branched out into their own organization, and I've stayed close with them. And that's Kent and Clever, those folks there. We have a strategic relationship. They're fantastic, and we've really been able to massively broaden our capabilities by offering programmatic as an alternative for a more nuanced and more what I call kind of a supercharged or advanced level of reaching and targeting audiences. So we do reach B2C and B2B clients, but that's kind of the snapshot.
Okay. Now, a couple of things you're mentioning there is lots of targeting. I know programmatic is going to be kind of hyper targeting. Let's take a step back, because you offer internet advertising, which I'd say has been around now for 20 almost 25 years, you could say. It's changed a lot.
Yeah.
It's definitely changed a lot. There's business to business advertising, which is obviously the focus of this show, and there's business to consumer. If you were to break internet advertising into evolutions, and this kind of puts you on the spot, where would you say we are? Are we in like the third evolution of internet advertising? Are we in the fifth? Where would you say we are?
You know, the change happens so frequently. It's hard for me to mark a defined phase. I just as a little bit of context, I come from a print and direct mail background before I got into digital. So there was a term we used to use called spray and pray for generic mailing, where you just print a postcard, a generic postcard, and put an address on it and just massively distribute it to people and just hope that some of that nets in some results for you. And I think the early game in digital adopted some of that technique, where it was just sort of traditional, same with traditional media. You have television and radio and old style billboards, of sort of spray and pray, where you're just trying to get a lot of reach and just hope that net catches the right fish. But certainly it's become a lot more nuanced since it's I don't know when the beginning of digital advertising you would call that, but defining audiences and trimming the fat and really hyper targeting the right people at the right time with the right message. It has gotten so good with the development of tracking capabilities and cookies and whatnot. So you have obviously the introduction of Facebook advertising, 10, 12 years ago, that has evolved and is changing. So where we are, which phase, I'm not sure. I would say we're probably, certainly the phase one, if I had to, I've never thought about it this way, but phase one would probably be a lot of general banner advertising. Search was very infant, and now we've kind of gone from that into more of a more sophisticated targeting options with cookies. We're about to enter into a non-cookie or less reliant on cookie with some of the problems that Facebook had with some of the name is escaping me, the British firm, but some of the issues they had.
Cambridge Analytica.
Cambridge, thank you.
Okay.
And then as someone's pointing out here, the impact of Apple's internet or Apple's operating system, they're going to be giving their users the upfront option to opt in or opt out of some of the cookies. So and some there's a lot more things happening with cookieless tracking that's going to change the way that we do things. But it's evolving constantly. I think that's the main thing to take away, and it's a lot of fun if you're on the ride.
Yeah, and the nature of my question was this: if we think back, I like that you use the term spray and pray, because pre-internet it kind of was always that way. If you look into advertising, which advertising as we know it is almost, maybe I'd say less than 150 years, maybe definitely less. Mm-hmm. But let's just go back 100 to 120. How did you advertise? Well, you basically went through publications and mm-hmm. you also did printed ads and you put them in places. When radio came in the mix, that evolved advertising. TV evolved advertising. But it was always spray and pray. It was always, let's come up with a message, let's throw it out there, and let's just see what happens. And there really was no way to attribute your ad dollars. And then
right.
There's always been that adage of, I know my advertising works, I just don't know which half.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I would say that what the internet brought in was the ability to better understand which half is not working or mm-hmm. is working. But I also would argue that it just added all sorts of layers of complexity. Yeah. And now it's so complicated to do advertising. It's almost like, have we really evolved? And we can't mm-hmm. undo where we're at. So I say all that, is programmatic bringing in a new level of advertising that could be comparable to solving this problem that the internet has caused with advertising, which is an overwhelming amount of metrics and whatnot.
I would say fundamentally the challenge and objective is the same, is to reach the right people with the right message, and trim the fat. And there have been an introduction of a tremendous amount of metrics you just didn't have before. They were just basically guesses before. You had Nielsen's and you had ratings and so forth from traditional advertising. Now you have all the metrics you could ever ask for, but only some of them really matter. There's some of them that just they have a niche kind of a level of importance, but depending on the client's objective, you really don't want to drown them in that. And that's a big part of what we try to do, is break down this ocean of data and use our expertise and our understanding of the client's objectives to really focus not only ourselves, but get our clients involved in what really matters. How do we know when you get started, how are we going to know if this is a successful campaign? How are we going to measure success? What is it going to look like? What levels are we going to say that this was a good thing, this was a bad thing? And that's a big part of our job, is to translate that for a client.
Speaking of, you had mentioned only some of the metrics matter. Does that depend on the business, the audience, and the type of advertising? Are those ones that matter going to change? For sure. So a lot of you on this will have heard of the funnel. You have different stages of engagement for a client. You have top of funnel, where you're just getting brand awareness. You have middle of funnel, where you're engaging and considering a purchase. And then you have bottom of funnel, where you're absolutely ready to buy and you're looking for that buy now button. So different tactics have different objectives. So if your objective as a marketer or as a company is to reach as many people as possible, you wouldn't measure the success of that based on how many people bought your product, even though you'd certainly love as many to buy your product as possible. The measurement there is, cost per thousand, for example. Flip it over. If you have a bottom of funnel tactic and objective, maybe it's a search campaign, maybe it's something along those lines where you really just want to sell product, or you want to get people to fill a form or call, then you would not measure the success of that on impressions or cost per impression. So the metrics really are aligned with the objective and the tactic, and we really try to put a fence around that for our clients. Now I know we're going to get more into programmatic, folks, because we're gonna bring Russell on in a moment and switch to website visitors. But then we're going to have Michael back on with Kent Julian as well, who's his partner behind the programmatic side of things. In 30 seconds or less, how could you distinguish the idea of programmatic advertising from, let's just say, Facebook ads, Google retargeting? What's the real difference there?
So programmatic is a different animal. It's just a different way of reaching audiences. There are some more advanced targeting techniques, but it's not limited to just one type of a screen. You could have connected television, online video, audio, so your Spotify's out there, digital display, native, digital outdoor advertising. All of those are options, and it really, there's just a more sophisticated level of being able to target and retarget audiences who are on different devices and cross-channel attribution. So there's it's just what I consider it an auxiliary complementary strategy that is more refined than some of the other early, like Google ads and Facebook ads.
Okay. All right, great. So folks, we're going to just put a small pin in this conversation. We're going to pick back up in about 15 minutes. We'll have Kent Julian on and Michael back in just a few moments. So let me just, I guess, take a moment right now and say, Michael, thank you for blocking this out and showing up here. And then we'll look forward to having you on in for a few more minutes to extend this conversation. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'm going to put this on pause, and then Russell, if you want to go ahead and get ready, folks, we'll be back in just a moment with Russel Gentry from M1 Data and Analytics. All right, we made it. Hello, Russell. Good afternoon. Is that Iron Man behind you?
It is. It is. Hey, Ryan, how are you doing, man?
I'm pretty good. I feel like you might have moved things around from last time we talked.
No, I'm actually, last time we talked, I was up in Central Florida, my home in Orlando. I'm in our offices in Fort Lauderdale this week, so it's a little bit different background here.
So you carry the Star Wars theme no matter where you go. Russell was on my Mobility Tech and Connectivity show just last week. It just worked out that he's here as well, and so that's pretty fascinating. So
yeah, I'm quite the geek, I guess. Some people call it a problem. I call it a hobby. So.
Hey, you're gonna have to be obsessed with something. So I think that's good obsession and a great moral story or a series of stories as well with Star Wars. Well, good to have you here on the B2B Hour. You just heard my conversation with Michael, which we'll pick up where we left off. And I was thinking about internet advertising in general, not to exclude programmatic, but all advertising. Right? You have brand awareness, right? You want to get that message out. I always refer to the McDonald's and insurance companies, right? State Farm, Prudential. They're just constantly staying front and center. Yeah, because people are going to switch insurance or people need insurance. But I'm a big believer in blogs and websites as your primary assets. And as we all know, you get analytics. I'll use Google Analytics. You can see how much traffic got to a place. You can see where that traffic came from. You can see what they did. Yeah. But you don't really know who it is.
Yeah.
And I think there are tools out there to help you with that. So why don't we get into your message and how you and your company identify these website visitors and what you do with them.
Yeah, right on. So you hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's so much emphasis placed on branding, retargeting, creating these funnels where consumers, and oftentimes the destination is back to the brand or the company's website, right? So there's an immense amount of energy and money that goes into driving traffic to the website. And, traditionally the approach is, as you stated, to use Google Analytics, but it's all anonymous traffic, right? You just know page views, and how many pages, how long they've been on the site, which pages they looked at, et cetera. But we really don't know that it's Ryan or it's Russ, et cetera. And there's been some other tools out there that work in the space that try to do retargeting, but it's still not a one-to-one connection. So what we have been working on, and very successfully, it's in thousands of different companies, all the way from large down to very, very small, is our Smart Pixel technology, which is not dependent upon third-party cookies. It's also not dependent upon IP retargeting. It's a patent pending process that truly develops a digital fingerprint in a fully compliant manner and identifies the consumer. Russel Gentry, 123 Main Street. Here's his email address, and he drives a Corolla.
Now, from my experience, identifying businesses by IP address is not an absolute science, but you can identify associated IP addresses to businesses. Are you suggesting the same idea but identifying non-businesses, meaning individual consumers?
Yeah, so what really was an interesting phenomenon for us, this was primarily a business, a B2C tech, when we started the adventure. What's happened because of all the work from home mentalities and everything that's happened in the last year or so, we have so many individuals that aren't working on site at large corporations. So Smart Pixel has been leveraged in a fashion to actually try to identify those individuals or create a model that says, hey, Russ is looking at your goods and services. It doesn't work nearly as effectively if it's near, VPNs and firewalls and that type of thing, because of that they're built to shield that identity and provide that protection. But in the absence of that, it certainly provides a little bit more insight for the brand.
So can you get into mechanically how it works? So a consumer hits the site, your Pixel technology gets fired. What happens? Like, what information are you collecting?
Yeah, so it's very, very simple tech. The power is really in the data that we match to, but the tech itself is a line of code that's placed into the header of the website, any website, and it fires every 4 seconds. It collects 12 very innocuous elements from the information from the device, whether it's a laptop, iPad, desktop, computer, etc. None of that is PII, but because of our vast data stores, M1 compiles its own consumer file. We have an index, so we can look at those 12 elements and within about a 99.2% confidence level, identify the individual on a one-to-one basis. So it's basically a fingerprint. We take that information from the device in a very compliant, non-invasive way. We move it over to a first-party compliant database, and it empowers brands to know that, hey, Russ or Ryan was visiting your website, and this is a bunch of information about them.
So you're collecting these 12 points in every single visit, or is it does the visitor have to come back and it takes a few visits?
No, it happens instantaneously. It's really pretty amazing. Once the code is put onto the site, it's just a few moments before it propagates, and all of a sudden it's collecting information. We post all that information for the client back to a UI, UX, a platform. That information is aggregated there every 15 minutes. We were real time at one point, but we started assessing the number of clients that were using it in a true real-time fashion, and they just weren't there. This is more for audience building, Ryan. So we know that, hey, we sell purple sweaters, and purple sweaters are traditionally sold to females over the age of 20 or whatever that demographic might be.
Okay, I want to get a little bit deeper in the technology and the actual experience of it. And then, folks, what we're going to do in about 5 minutes is we're going to turn this into a panel discussion. We're going to bring Michael Morscheck back on, who I just interviewed. We also have Kent Julian from Cleaver and Richard Delancey joining us on the panel in just a few moments. So we'll get to make it more of a dynamic discussion. But staying focused on a visitor hits the site, you're gathering these 12 data points. So I'm trying to think of did you say what some of those points are? Obviously, it would be their IP address would be one, right?
Well, we don't necessarily, we stay away from the IP address. It's not one of the 12 primary fingerprinting elements because we didn't want to have to depend on IP retargeting. And IP retargeting, as many as 16 to 22 different devices can be on a single IP address. So we can't really develop that Ryan, brand to Ryan or brand to Russ connection if we think that it's not really singular to an individual. So, but the 12 elements, some examples would be, can the device read color? Because we're very, very into the fact that we have to match to human beings. And as everybody knows, including your previous guests, I mean, there's a lot of different players out there. And unfortunately, our industry is full of a lot of, bots and click farms and that type of thing. So the device, looks at, can it read color? Because a bot can't read color. And other elements that we align up. We're just very fortunate because of the way that we harvest and compile our data, that we sit on both sides of the fence, right? So we have all these elements, and we've developed this technology around 12 that we know really can hone in on the individual.
So specifically with the whole device reading color, like you said, the purpose of that is to distinguish, is this a bot or not? Because identifying the device, that's simple. Every single device that hits a server is identifiable. So you're talking iPad, what kind of phone, or whatever kind of device that is. And every version, the version, right? I think
we know language, the whole 9 yards, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So if it's not, how do you know if it's a bot? Is there just not a device to identify?
Now, a lot of the bots are actually devices. I mean, they're just set up in a way that's crawling the internet from a PC for whatever reason. Now, there's good bots and bad bots, commercially viable options where a bot might be crawling and gathering information for a brand. So it's not to say that every bot is a bad bot. Traditionally, there is a lot of ad fraud out there, and that. So when I say that, hey, it can read color, we know it's a bot. We're just not matching back to a real human being. And if a brand wants to sell a purple sweater, a car, a couch, a timeshare, it really has to be engaging with the human being. So that's why we make that distinction. Yeah.
Okay. So IPs are not as useful. And then there's the whole cookie thing that, that Google and Google's technically a publisher of ads. So that they're all getting away from third-party cookies. How does that affect someone using Smart Pixel? Does it have any adverse effect that you have to adapt around?
No adverse effect whatsoever. We continue to test on all of the updates that come out, both on Google Chrome as well as Safari with their Apple browser, which controls probably the largest market share. As they're termed, the walled gardens, right? So yeah, the third-party cookies, we suspect that probably before now and the end of the year will be extinct, if you will. They won't be useful in fingerprinting and retargeting these individuals. And as you know, Ryan, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that uses that retargeting. So there's a lot of teams and people that are looking towards different ways to try to find out how to re-engage these individuals.
And before we switch into our panel mode, one final question: Do customers using Smart Pixel have any long-term considerations or ramifications that they might need to consider as far as the data that's being collected? I think when laws are passed, it's not like Congress goes historically and says, well, we just made a new law that you broke 10 years ago, so there's no accountability for that. But are there any sort of legal ramifications or even ethical ramifications that a business would need to consider using your product?
Yeah, so to the first part of the question, as far as a tail hook or a long term, we have two compliance attorneys that do nothing but constantly look at the different state and federal regulations. Everybody's kind of focused in on CCPA. Smart Pixel is CCPA compliant, but it's because it's California and CCPA. But there are additional laws out there. Nevada's coming out with one now or has one out that is probably even rougher than CCPA, but you just don't hear about it. So Smart Pixel is built the way it's built, and the fact that we maintain this database of clear and conspicuous choice with the consumer. So it's not a checkbox that they have to uncheck. It's a box that they have to check. So our entire audience is opted in a first-party basis. So we have compliance regulations and things that we follow, but data is a living creature, and it constantly changes. It needs care and attention. So we're constantly looking at, new revisions of state laws and et cetera. And then as far as any, I think the second part of your question was in regards to, things that might happen with the data ethically, right? Yeah. Most of the brands are looking to try to provide value to their consumers, right? So trying to say, hey, listen, they saw that they were on the RV site and they looked at 3 different forest rivers. So now they give them a highly incentivized postcard or email that says, X number of dollars off on the forest river. That's the kind of line where I think consumers have grown accustomed to it. We don't output phone numbers. We do not send the Smart Pixel data into call centers per se from the Smart Pixel data. We've just found that brands, if they want to try to do that in a more curated message, we don't want to be responsible for that. We have the phone numbers. So it's really about the lines that the brand's trying to do. If they have a consumer connection, I don't think the consumers, they're not revolting to this, right? They're revolting to what they don't know and what they don't have transparency to.
Yeah, I asked that question because we tend to put our trust into technology companies. And I think what I've learned, and I think others have learned over time, is that tech companies have information that they can utilize for their own purposes, and sometimes could be nefarious purposes that are not in alignment with their own personal values. And so obviously you can pull the plug with a company, or you can try sometimes, but there's ramifications I think that we don't always consider, and I think that's going to change. I think, and I know it is for me, when I look at doing business with anyone, I'm thinking, okay, what kind of information is being exchanged and what could possibly be done with it down the road? At least we're asking the question.
Right.
So that's why I was curious, because you are gathering what I'd call, you're identifying visitors. That's pretty sensitive.
Yeah.
Pretty sensitive info.
Yeah. And we to that point, real quickly, we take that responsibility very seriously. There is a series of automated opt-outs where the consumer is able to opt out of that, the monitoring. It's an automatic link that's embedded in the privacy language of the websites. Companies can opt to either have the pop-up window display or have the privacy language piece. So we consider all of that and keep the consumers in mind. And the process is built that at any point, if they raise their hand and don't want to be involved, they aren't involved.
All right, very good. So let's take a 30-second intermission. I'm going to do an orientation, but Russel Gentry, everybody here from M1 Data and Analytics, we're talking about anonymous website visitors, how to identify that and turn that into active prospects. Russel, thanks for joining us and being part of the conversation.
Always a pleasure, Ryan. Thanks, man.
Okay, folks. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick intermission, and I'm going to do a quick orientation, and we'll bring Richard and Kent up here as well. So if you guys want to go ahead and get ready, and we'll bring Michael back. I am going to share my screen real briefly, just so everybody knows. Let me go back here. Monday. Oh, gotta bump this one. There we go. Okay. Monday, April 26th, is this coming Monday. We have an interview with Cheryl Backelder. She is the director of U.S. Foods at Chick-fil-A, and Rob Holman will be interviewing her as part of his 12 interview series he's doing this year. This is interview number 4, and their focus will be on caring and collaborative leadership. That'll be right here on the Auto Conversion YouTube channel at 10 a.m. Central on, on Monday. We're about to get into our B2B Marketing Pros discussion panel. Folks, we have a series of free discussion groups. If you go to autoconversion.net, look at Grow, and you can see all the different discussion groups we have. There's about 5 within automotive. We have this one, B2B, and we also do audio video pros as well. And the whole idea is periodically, like on this show, we feature these discussion groups, and everyone who's registered with those groups does receive an invite to participate. Of course, the benefit is you get to meet great people like you are today, learn about great technology. So if you're in the business of your personal brand or reputation, if you want to network and generate leads and do business development, get yourself registered with any one of our Grow programs and get yourselves involved. All right, so I'm going to go back to this view here. Got all 5 of us. So what I'd like to do is go to Kent, if I could put you on the spot. You heard Michael and I talking. Introduce yourself, explain your relation with Michael and his company, and then what would you add to the conversation or pick up where Michael and I left off?
Yeah, with pleasure. So thanks for having me. My name is Kent Julian. I'm part of Clever Programmatic Inc. So what we do is we run Programmatic. We've been in the business. Well, I've personally been in the Programmatic business close to 15 years, digital media close to 20 years. And I've been, as Michael said before, we've worked together on a number of projects, same companies, and we've always had that great type of relationship. And, we work well together, and there's no denying that. So we've always continued our relationship, and we always see how we could, help each other grow in our businesses. Go ahead.
No, I appreciate that. So we know, and I'll lay this out there. We know that programmatic is more geared towards business to consumer models. So maybe speak to that from a consumer, from a business's standpoint, how they would use that to reach their consumer. But then what I want to do is bring that into, if you're on the B2B side, where that could apply, where we could apply programmatic media on the B2B side.
Oh, for sure. So yeah, as mentioned before, majority of advertising, programmatic advertising, it's much easier and it's much more focused probably on the B2C side. And from a programmatic point of view, as you all know, it's all based on data. So we're a bunch of data geeks, and what we look at is we try to take all this data and analyze it and find trends and ways to find the right people so that we could serve the right ad at the right time. So all this being said, from a consumer point of view, we leave the data, indicators, flags on everything we do from the minute we wake up and we open our phones and we open our laptops, tablets, to even what we're streaming on TV. So we take all these things and, we find ways to hit the right people with the right messages, at the right time. Now, when it boils down to B2B, all these markers are still there, but you have to be a bit more creative on, how you're targeting folks. So as mentioned before, probably from a B2B perspective, we still have a great database on, third-party segments. But we have to look to the future to see how are we going to use these things. Well, that's going to be extinct eventually. Other than that, we have other ways of targeting, as mentioned, IP targeting, maybe from a B2B. We have a lot of data on mobile devices, locations, visits. Where have you been? Where are you going to be? Trends of that sort. And then there's more of maybe the traditional ways of contextual targeting. And we're looking from a programmatic point of view, we look at all these things. And then in terms of the channels, we look how we could hit people on connected TV, on video, from a native point of view, audio and digital out of home.
What do you mean by native? Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So native is kind of the way I like to position it is if you have a product or a service, but you really want to educate, your audience about what you have to offer versus, click here or buy now. Native is a type of ad where it blends into the publisher's content. So you might think you're reading a story, but it's a sponsored story per se. Explaining the benefits of, buying a Tesla versus, a Hyundai or a hybrid.
And when an advertiser does that, or when a publisher, say, displays native advertising, does it have to be labeled and identified as such?
It does.
Because we see that a lot, right? You might even see a link, and there's usually a little tooltip or something that says, paid ad or sponsored link. Sometimes.
Exactly. So just to follow, the standards and not to, trick anyone.
And the publisher is going to handle that. Why is it called programmatic? I think most of us do understand that you're referring to a form of digital advertising that's different from Google ads, Facebook, social media ads. It's different. This is not those types of ads. This is ads showing up on TV. Where else is programmatic advertising appearing? Give us real world so that we can relate to.
Yeah, with pleasure. So, you mentioned the first one. There's connected TV or over-the-top OTT. So if people are, streaming using certain devices or watching specific content, there are ads that pop up in there as commercials, but it's not linear TV or traditional TV. It's programmatic. So, real life example. I was in the market for a hybrid car. So I was, doing my research online, doing this, and I was leaning towards one brand. And then all of a sudden, when I was streaming TV, I started to see ads for this specific car. When I opened my cell phone and I'm browsing, I'm starting to see ads for that type of car. Same thing on my tablet. So, I know this strategy is keyword search for programmatic. So, as an example here at Clever, what we do is we have a database of keywords that people search. And then if you want to run a campaign and you provide us with the first party data of a keyword list, we could then serve ads to people who have browsed or are intent to look for these type of things and serve them the ad, whether it be on CTV, a video ad, a native ad, an audio ad on Spotify or whatnot, as real life example.
Let me bring Richard into the conversation because I know you're coming from the angle of website traffic, identifying visitors. Are you familiar with or are you using programmatic technology in any of your advertising right now, Richard?
Yeah, that's primarily what we do with Dealership Toolkit. And the neat thing is with Russell's data from M1, we can create those custom audience sets, lookalike audiences, and take people that were on the website and be able to put it into a position where we can serve up incredibly relevant ads to that person. traditionally, we used to use Google Analytics or put a GTM tag on a website or another type of tag and just simply retarget off the IP or retarget website visitors. But the problem with that is, as we talked earlier in the show, that there could be multiple people on that IP address. So if you're just simply retargeting off the IP address, you're wasting money talking to people that may not be in the market, as well as you have little control over the quality of what you're retargeting. The great thing with something like a Smart Pixel or an M1 data is that if we want to go after people we work with a lot of RV dealers at Dealership Toolkit. RV dealers selling things like a Tiffin motorhome, which could be upwards of $425,000, $450,000. That's something that is a little out of reach for a segment of our population. So if somebody is on a dealership website and they're dreaming about that Tiffin, but the income looking data coming off the M1 shows that, this is somebody that's retired or somebody that's, in an entry-level job making less than $30,000 a year, it might not be a good use of the client's money to retarget them. Whereas if somebody's in an upper-tier income bracket, or if somebody is, getting ready to retire or owns a motorhome today, now you can hit that person a little bit harder. So what the data does for us is it really, really, really allows us to focus in to make sure that we deliver the right message to the right consumer. One of the things I thought that was interesting that you asked Russell at the end of his segment was about the ethical part of using the data and any pushback. One of the things that we do is we deploy email automatically through our toolkit portal. We bring the data in, and then our portal cleans and scrubs it. And if you're in a good relevant group for us to hit, we're going to send you an email automatically. So you think about the workflow in this. I'm a consumer and I go to something like Brickell Honda's website and I'm poking around looking at a car, within a couple hours in my email box, there's an email from Brickell Honda. It's kind of intrusive because I didn't give my email address to Brickell Honda. I didn't know Brickell Honda even knew I was on the website. And when we first started doing this, and I remember I had discussions with Russ's partner, Greg, and he was a little, with it. I thought we were going to have a spam or a complaint high ratio with it. But our spam on the data is less than normal opted-in lists that people give you. We get very, very little spam, and it's because we're delivering relevant messages to people who are legitimately in the market. You're not on Brickell Honda's website for fun. Nobody goes there to hang out for fun. You're there because you're thinking about buying a car, and so you're not. You don't hate the fact that, hey, they just sent me an email with some great car deals. Now, if we would abuse the database where, we were talking in the ethics, let's say I sign a pizza company and now I'm going to deliver pizza emails to people just happen to be in the Brickell Honda area. Yeah, we probably get drilled with spam. But we really, really protect the database, and we really, really use the database to try to connect a business with their customer in a way that helps the transaction for both sides.
As we're talking about these things, I'm thinking back to, the movie, The Social Dilemma. If you haven't seen it, then you won't recognize it, but everyone kind of chuckled. There's the scene where you have the three guys, it's the same actor, and they're all in like the control room trying to push the levers to make sure that they keep this user engaged and then serve them the ad. I mean, this is real, because the way you talk about it, it's like there's someone sitting there making the decisions, but it's not. It's not like we're sitting making an individual decision. This is all through machine learning and automation that's happening. But this is real. I mean, these are what the algorithm. This is programmatic. I think fair enough, Kent. This is. If you saw the scene, that's what we're talking about here, right? Little minds making decisions to try to what? To get the ad out there.
Exactly, and all of this happens in like the fraction of a second. So
Yes.
it's all based on data. And there's an exchange between, okay, I'm trying to find a person in market for a red car based in Washington D.C. Whose lease is going to expire within the next 6 months, and the publisher might have an inventory for that, and all of this exchange happens in a fraction of a second. You win the bid, and then your ad is served to that specific person. So that's like kind of like the definition of the programmatic setup to all this, and it's all really from my experience and perspective is you really need to set up and really identify your campaign goals, who your target audience is, and then really have an eye on the data as the campaign is running, because it is a living beast and you have to adjust accordingly to be the most effective with each and every impression that you serve.
I was going to say that same thing. When you asked earlier, what stage are we on in the digital evolution? I look at it when I started years and years ago. The role of a digital analyst was much different than the role of the digital analyst today. I spent a majority of my time back in the early 2000s just moving the money around, making sure we spent, making sure that the keyword lists were tight. And today, largely from the programmatic side, the computer does that. And so what you need out of a digital analyst today isn't so much understanding of how to make ads work, but how to make the conversions work. And what I mean by that, the digital analyst today needs to know the client's business. They need to know, like, for example, RV dealers. Typically, an RV dealer doesn't want service customers other than the people that they sell, because it's hard to get parts. It's hard to, have that all come in. And so you need to know that, so that way, when you're setting up your audiences, you're excluding people who are searching for, RV repair or a roof leak, seal. And so that's where the digital analyst today is really becoming that old school marketer, like we would see out of Mad Men, where they're trying to get in the head of their clients and learn what not only their clients want to achieve, but what their customers demand of their clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. And that actually echoes what you mentioned before with the adage, where like, I know my advertising is working, but I don't know which half. Technically, with programmatic now and a good analyst, while your campaign is running, if you get a good insights afterwards, your analyst is going to be able to tell you, hey, look, this is not working. This is where we should focus our money. And, this is giving you the most bang for your buck, pretty much at the end of your budget.
Question came in, and Russell, you might probably be able to answer this, but does programmatic media make it? The question is programmatic media open up more identifiable information of who your ads are reaching? And I would preface that with, I know, I don't like if I take Facebook advertising, Facebook's like, hey, you said we got to spend $500. So we did. And we reached these many thousands of people, and this many, this few dozens or hundreds clicked. But then you sit back and you're like, well, my lead box isn't filled up with even half of those. It's like, what really happened here? So so Russell, is that something you could answer? Maybe do you like programmatic over other forms? Does it give more insight?
Well, what I do like, which Michael and Rich and Kent have discussed, is that they're marketers, right? But at the core of all of it, it's data. It's data to target the audience. It's data to target what is the best offer, that type of thing. And of course, being a data guy, I'm happy to hear that they're wildly successful with data, because that's a very self-serving thing. Now, from the standpoint of programmatic opening up, I think there's in my humble opinion, there's two ways that is possible. The most optimal way for the marketer is that the programmatic spurs some kind of engagement, transaction, hand-raising event, something along those lines, right? It gets them into a funnel. So of course, at that point, if it gets them into a funnel and the marketers are doing a really good job, to Rich's point, it opens up a wealth of information. The consumer starts, using text software, or they phone the dealership, or they put, email back to an email. So that's the first way. The second way is more technical. As both Kent and Michael can identify, they're going to see the MAIDs from these devices that interact with the ads and that type of thing. It's still an anonymous kind of basis at that point, but there is technology and ways out to create re-engagement off of those MAIDs as well.
Yeah, one of the things we like to do with the MAIDs is, follow it through to see which of those people end up at the client location. And then the same thing too with having the pixel on a website. One of the big things that throughout the years since I started selling websites way too many years ago is, I'd have a customer say, well, how do you know my website's doing anything for me?
Mm-hmm.
Now, luckily, we don't have that today like we used to, but with the Smart Pixel, you can take a client's sales and run it against the people that were identified on the website and start closing the loop, because somebody just came in today and they looked around and they didn't submit a lead, they didn't call, they just showed up at the store and bought. Now we're going to be able to give that attribution and say, hey, they were there. And one of the great things I love about the Smart Pixel is they can show the referring URL that comes in and the things that people are clicking. So we can go into that and we can look and say, oh, wow, we can see the Google AdWords UTM on this. So this person came in from a Google ad campaign, or this person came in from Facebook, or this person came in from, the ad on the television station website. And so that really allows you now to start putting that whole complete the circle together.
Okay, I think you're hitting in on something important. Let's take that, because I was looking for a real world scenario. If I'm say watching YouTube on my web TV, and YouTube's serving up ads, some of those ads it's serving up are coming from advertisers doing programmatic media, and choosing for those. Now YouTube, I don't know if I have to be logged in or not. Does YouTube know who I am, whether I'm logged in or not? Does anyone know that?
Well, they definitely know who you are if you're logged in. I'm sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, if you're logged in, they're going to assume that's you.
But they know your device. If you're not logged in, your device is still.
They know your device. They know your locale.
Yeah,
and they know all the other content that whoever is on that device is consuming. Now, let's say I see an ad for a company, and then I just decide to go research that company on my phone. And then I end up on your website. Now I'm there because of that ad. Put you. Does Smart Pixel know?
It comes from a referring URL or referring domain, right? So if there's some kind of naming convention that the programmatic advertisers use, let's say they take them, for example, to a landing page, and that's the only place they're driving that programmatic advertising to, they would know there, right? You could use timing and frequency. Say you're running those ads on certain days of the week or certain hours, and you see a spike in increase. But Smart Pixel is only going to pick up the information about the individual. Smart Pixel is designed because of compliance and our belief, humbly, that going from website to website to website isn't always in the consumer's best interest, but a brand certainly has the right to interact with customers that are there for its site. So we can see how they come in the referring page, but we're not going to follow them anywhere else. And if the naming convention's not there, we probably wouldn't see that as well.
Where you would see it is if in let's say you clicked an ad, and on that ad, most people tag their ads because they want to track to see which ads work better than others. So oftentimes we can see that tag in the referring URL, so where it can really help us complete the picture. One of the neat things that we like to look at is a lot of our clients deploy an awful lot of email. So all those email links are all tagged, and now we're seeing on Smart Pixel, hey, this person came in from the email blast. And it really brings everything together.
You know, Ryan, real quickly, I'd like to, because Michael, in the segment when you were talked about OTT and connected TV and devices. Rich and I obviously do a lot of business in the RV side of things, you know, and people are streaming. They're watching their television on devices in RVs and at campgrounds and stuff. My partner Greg and I are a huge fan of the connected TV piece and how it's going to kind of displace a lot of those linear dollars, you know, for regular television stations.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious what Michael thinks about that and how the industry, what direction it's going to go, you think?
Well, I'll defer a little bit to Kent on this, but my thoughts are, you know, we measure success of traditional TV in a very trustworthy way. We're willing to accept these Nielsen ratings. We're willing to accept these general, vague audience measurements, and we say it's working or not working. But then you do digital video, digital connected television over the top. Now you have the fidelity to measure in a much more nuanced way, and all of a sudden you're getting very, very and appropriately so, very particular about, okay, well, is it really working? Whereas you may have been spending all that money on a traditional television ad and never thought twice about it because you're just, you know, it's checking a box for you. But now that you have the ability to have a nuance, you're holding it to a higher standard, which is good because you're legitimately understanding your audiences. But it's interesting to me. Yeah, I definitely feel like it's a threat to traditional media, sort of traditional television. Kent, what's your experience on that?
Well, again, it's a living beast, right? Because we're in different times now. So when you look at the population, we have people who are accustomed to traditional TV. We have like millennials who never subscribed to cable before and just stream everything. And you have a mix of both. And then based on, you know, the past year that we've all experienced, there's people working from home, have like 5-6 screens going on at the same time. So it's not really, I don't see it as a competition, but we look at it as the data as how we could complement and extend the reach of traditional TV and also get it to these other, you know, demographics. So what we usually do, like we refer to it as an omni-channel approach. Mm-hmm. And let's say at the top of the funnel, you might have CTV, which is branding. And we could tell, as you mentioned before, like we could identify the device, depending on the DSPs that you use, we could identify maybe that household or that person. And then from the omni-channel approach, if we know that we could track, like, did the person watch the whole commercial? How many times did the person see the commercial? If they showed interest, then they could fall into a bucket where they're retargeted with a display ad, which could then lead them to the site. And then once they get to the site, we can track if they took any action. So if they made a purchase, how much the purchase was, then we get into discussions of return on your ad spend. And we connect the dots in that approach. So we know on day 1, they saw the CTV ad. On day 5, they were retargeted with a display ad. On day 7, they went to the site. Okay. And then on day 9, they made a conversion and bought something worth $500. So that's kind of like the value of what we try to bring to a campaign and to provide all this stats and info while it's running and post campaigns, and then give you recommendations for future campaigns.
Awesome. Michael, a question came in, which I think I'll send your way for right now, is, are there certain types of businesses and industries that are going to benefit the most from programmatic advertising?
I think it depends on your budget and your objectives. If you have the budget and your objectives, see, that one of the great things about programmatic, as Kent has said, is it covers the entire experience from top of funnel to bottom of funnel, and the cross-channel attribution is tremendously valuable. So anyone who has a marketing budget and who has objectives for anybody in those in the funnel, there's very few marketing scenarios where I don't think programmatic could be a fit.
What's a realistic budget that someone needs to be considering? Because that was going to be my final question to you, is if a business wants to get into programmatic, what do they need to consider? What do they need to consider to be prepared for? And then what kind of budget is realistic? And I know that's a loaded question. It's like, well, what do you want to accomplish? But like, I would tell people, hey, if you want to get into Facebook ads, you could get in as little as $150, you know, but I don't know. I don't think that's going to apply in programmatic.
Right. I'll kick this one to you.
Yeah. It's a tough one, guys. And honestly, I get this question almost like every day. And I always say, honestly, it depends. You know, you can run a campaign from as low as, you know, $1,000, and you could run, you know, a campaign up to, you know, 6 figures. It really depends. Like, are you targeting all of the US? Are you targeting a specific state? Are you looking to, you know, get your money back, like a return on ad spend? Is it simply branding and awareness? Like, there's so many ways that, you know, there's so many dynamics to a campaign that it really can't be answered. Like, if someone gives you an answer, you know, you should ask someone else.
But I mean, you did kind of answer. You did answer that. If someone came and said, "Hey, I really like the idea of doing this. I have a $500 annual budget. What can you do for me?" You'd probably have to say, "Programmatic's not really going to work. You can't do that, right?"
No, honestly, I would not say that. I'd have to ask at least like maybe 5 to 10 more other questions, really, just to define like who your audience is, how big your audience is, like you know, like what's your time frame, you know, what are you looking to gain from this?
Yeah,
it's really. I think that's the beauty of it too. It's super adaptable in terms of the type of campaigns you can put together, and it's all based on data and who you want to reach.
I would say that they have to save $349 of the $500 and get Smart Pixel, and then use the balance to the ad. That's what I would, you know.
The key is to keep it deep, and no matter what you do. And what I mean by that is, you think about that water. If you spill water on a table, at first it's all pooled and you can stick your finger in it and, you know, move around. But as the water runs out, it gets really thin, and eventually you can't even see it. That's the danger with programmatic and programmatic budgets. Because if you spread that and you try to do too much, you could have a $100 million budget, but if you spread it across too much, you're not going to get the bang for your buck. So where your example is the guy with $500 per year, yeah, you could do programmatic, but we just have to keep it very, very limited to get the very best use of that money. And to do that, we might be, you know, targeting men who are like golf, whose favorite food is, you know, Spam, and who wear fedoras. And there might only be 5 of those people out there, but man, all next year, those 5 people are going to see your ads a lot.
I like it. I'm going to use that water analogy. I love that.
Well, guys, we are out of time. Went a little bit over, but no big deal. We're out of time. So first off, thank you very much, Russell. Thanks for inviting Richard, and Michael, thank you for inviting Kent. Great to meet all 3 of you for the first time here virtually. And of course, this is big subject matter, and just the nature of our businesses. This is certainly themes that we will be revisiting, and that's why we do this here. So thank you, gentlemen, very much for being here.
You bet. Thanks, guys.
Well, thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
So I'm going to go ahead and let them go for right now. We'll let them hop off there. And that was Russel Gentry from M1 Data and Analytics, and Michael Morscheck from Brand Market Media. We were talking about programmatic media or advertising and anonymous website visitors, and how you can identify them. In this case, using Russell's Smart Pixel technology to help in that area. Now, this is the second time we've done this program. It's kind of an evolution from a concept from a couple of years ago. We're doing this every month. Our next B2B hour is going to be in May. I want to say it's going to be the 19th. It's an hour-long program, and we do this for networking, learning, and business development, to meet people, thought leaders, and be introduced to great technologies like this as well. If you're not subscribed to AutoConversion, head over to autoconversion.net and do that. It's free, and the benefit is you'll receive emails from us letting you know about important events like this that come up. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and let YouTube email you and notify you as well. And if you want to get involved, if you want to be here on the show, if you want to be part of the panels, be part of the Q&A, look under our Grow menu. In this case, you want to sign up for B2B Marketing Pros. All that'll do is it'll send you a nice little welcome email. It'll tag you in the system. And that way, when we prepare for these, we can let you know about that. There also is, under our community, we have a private LinkedIn group. This is an unlisted group called Auto Conversion Programming for Influencers. And what we do is usually a week or 2 or 3 before an upcoming event, we put an announcement in the group to let people know when the next date is coming. That way, if anyone's not in the group, they'll at least have the ability to know about that, and you can register and be part of the conversation. And then for our premium members, you can participate in our Slack network. And what's great in Slack is this is where you have access to other premium members. We have tons of different channels of content. So basically, by being a premium member, you have unlimited access to our Slack network and all of our channels, all of our public channels. The private ones are exclusive to premium members that are registered for specific groups. And what else is great about Slack is you can start your own audio and video conversations within the channel or with other group members as well. So head on over to autoconversion.net and check out what we have going on. And one last announcement is, again, on Monday, we have Rob Holman's interview with Cheryl Backelder from Chick-fil-A and we'll be talking about caring and compassionate leadership. I am Ryan Girardi. Thank you so much for being here. Much appreciated. And that being said, I think I'm all done for the day. And I just want to wish everyone a great rest of your week. It is hump day. Have a great rest of the week. Reach out if you need anything. Take care, everybody. Thank you.